This video is brought to you by dankritual.com. If you use the promo code DREW10 at checkout, you can get 10% off of your order of the tan or green 2-player cloth playmats. Get your playmat today. What is up, everybody? It is Drew Traveler, the Burning Abyss, here with another video. And as you just saw, yes, you can get your 10% off of your Dank Ritual green or tan cloth playmats by using my promo code DREW10 at dankritual.com. The link will be down in the description. And, we have another deck profile for you that I promised everyone that would be coming out this week. And that is Burning Abyss, updated for the post-Albaz Strike structure deck release. And I want to make this clear before we fully jump into the deck profile. The deck does not include any cards from the Albaz Strike structure deck because it has zero synergy with Burning Abyss. However, that being said, we do have a definite change from the last deck profile that I posted the video, and obviously I wanted to discuss a little bit about how it plays against the meta. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into this, but before we do, if you guys are not subscribed already, make sure you go ahead and smash that subscribe button, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload more cool and awesome content just like the video you're watching right now. And obviously give the video a thumbs up because it makes me happy and it shows me that everybody is enjoying the content. But let's go ahead and dive into some Burning Abyss content. All right, so per usual, we'll be starting with the main deck. You're going to see some ratio changes for sure, in addition to some cards that weren't necessarily played in the last list that I posted. So starting with the BA lineup, we have 3 Graph because it is the most important Burning Abyss starter monster. I wouldn't say it's the most Burning Abyss monster as a whole, but it is the most important starter of the entire deck. Secondly, we have 3 copies of Seer. I actually went back to playing 3 Seer for this variation, and I think it is phenomenal. Very, very important to be playing 3 of this. And then 3 copies of Skarm. These are all the 3 ofs. Skarm is obviously important because you want to have follow-up. So with all those feature matches that I posted on my channel from my tournament at locals that I got 2nd place in, I was playing 2 Skarm, and after that I realized that a 3rd would definitely be helpful because then I get more follow-up ability, which to me was the only thing that was lacking in the deck sometimes. Like when I didn't draw what I needed, I was like, man, I wish I just had some follow-up stuff that could have just gotten me what I needed before I even started my turn. So I opted to add a 3rd Skarm, and I think it's extremely optimal, and you're doing a lot of milling in this variation, so you'll probably hit it and be able to resolve it. So that's the 3 ofs. The 2 ofs, we have double Farfa. I don't think you need more than 2 of this. And in other builds, I was showing everyone how to do the Trisbana lock. The Trisbana lock is insane. Basically, you open up Tour Guide and Farfa, and you lock your opponent out of the extra monster zone. And you have a Beatrice on board. So, that's really, really good. So, yeah, Farfa is really solid, but we're not doing the Trisbana lock in this variation of the deck, so we're just playing 2 of it. And two works perfectly fine. I also want to point out that this card was fantastic in the locals that I played in because I was able to out not only prank kid monsters if I needed to, but I could also out adventure tokens, and they don't come back because when a token is banished, it does not return to the field afterwards. So it's actually pretty nuts. This is a new 2 of. Before it was only a 1 of for me, but I think going forwards this is actually really important, and that is double Alec. So this card is actually completely bonkers. So let's say you go first and you end on your Beatrice IP and your opponent goes Branded Fusion. You can chain Beatrice and send Alec, and then whatever fusion monster they summon, you actually negate its effect, so they can't do an additional fusion summon. So yeah, that's really good. It's good against stuff like Verte too. You could dump this off of Beatrice and then target a Verte, and then they won't be able to activate the Verte because the effect will be negated. Obviously, you do that immediately on the Verte summon. You wouldn't do that when they activate the Verte effect. But yeah, I think that Alec is actually really good going forwards. There's a lot of other decks that it does hit. I'm just not going to go over all of them right now. I just felt that it was important to point out that this at 2 is actually really good. I actually really like it. Then the one-ofs. We have one Barbar, one Calcab, and one Libic. I think that these as the one-ofs was perfect. Like, that's just my thought process now. In the locals, I was playing Drahig and Rubik, and those actually replaced one of the Alex and one of the Skarms. But I opted to cut them out. It's not that they're terrible choices, it's just that I wanted to see some other cards more consistently per the meta now with the Albaz strike structure decks being out. So yeah, I think that these are optimal. Obviously in time this is good. This is good for anything that plays a lot of back row, and then the Libic is just generically good for a lot of situations, especially link climbing. Like, that's huge for link climbing. But moving on to the Honorary Burning Abyss cards, we're playing 3 copies of Fiendish Rhino Warrior and 2 copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld. When I played in the tournament, said that the Tour Guide was probably the one card that I didn't want to open frequently, and I lucked out and I didn't open it like too much. I opened it at the times where it was actually really optimal for me. I always wanted to search the Tour Guide off of a Skarm at the end phase, and most of the time that worked out in my favor, so I can't complain. It was fantastic. I think that this ratio is extremely, extremely strong. The Rhino Warrior came in clutch so much. Like, if you get this out on the board, like, let's say you go Tour Guide Summon Rhino, which isn't always the best play, but if you do that, and you were to detach the Rhino from a Dante, and on your mills you were to hit a Graph, you could do Graph Chainlink 1, Rhino Chainlink 2 to send a Skarm, and then you get your Graph to summon your Seer still, and you get a Search in the end phase. So, like, that's really good. So keep in mind that's actually a really strong play for chain blocking. Then lastly, we just have, we got a random hair. We got one Fairy Tale Snow. So this is the last, like, summonable monster that we played in the main deck. There are obviously other monsters that are hand traps that we'll go over, but the Fairy Tale Snow was fantastic. Everyone was like really fearful of this card, and for good reason. Like, this just puts in so much work. So yeah, the Snow, I'm not even going to go in depth on that. Like, it's really strong. If anyone plays like other card games like Magic the Gathering, there's a deck called Dredge, and Fairy Tale Snow does something similar to one of the cards in that deck. So it's a card that's really busted and puts in a lot of work and interrupts your opponent. So yeah, moving on to the hand traps though, we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 copies of Ghost Bell, 2 copies of Ghost Ogre, and 3 copies of Imperm. So I think going forward that this is fantastic. Obviously the Bell and the Ash are probably the 2 best hand traps in here, but you still have to play other hand traps, and I wanted to have a wide variety of things to at least put a damper on a lot, if not all, of the decks in the meta. And I think that everything in here puts a very, very large target on the back of a lot of those decks, because it just makes your opponent struggle to play. If you open up 2 hand traps against anything, you're good. There were a lot of games when I was playing locals that I was opening 2 hand traps. I mean, at that point I was playing Veiler, and I want to point out that the Veilers have now become Imperms, and I was playing Drolls, and the Drolls have now become Bells. So I think that's just how I had to adapt it for the release of the Albaz Strike deck, because the locals that I played in was prior to the release of it. So I think this is very optimal. It covers your bases for most, if not all, of the meta. Moving on to the spells, we do have another going second card, and I'm still playing the 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. I think that Forbidden Droplet is just amazing. This card's really, really good. It just hits so much. So, like, the fact that you have Droplet and you have Imperm is great against so many decks, because, like, you can just shut stuff off that you need to shut off. A lot of people now are shotgunning their DPE for a Scythe Lock, because they're doing it in like standby phase, so they don't get hit with a Triple Tactics talent. So you can use an Imperm for that. You can use a Droplet for that. Like, you have a lot of things you can do. So yeah, Droplet's really good. That was also, I want to point out, another one of the reasons that I put Imperm into the main deck is because it gives me a trap that I can send off of Droplet as well. So that's actually really, really important, because there was one game in locals where my opponent flipped a Solemn Judgment, and I sent a Veiler from hand, and if Valor had been the imperm, I would have probably been able to play that game. So yeah, I think that that's actually really important. Then 3 Pot of Prosperity. This is, in my eyes, either another Burning Abyss name that you need, or it's a hand trap. So that was my entire thought process with this, is that playing Pot of Prosperity grants me access to another Burning Abyss name or to another hand trap, depending on what I'm needing. It could get me to a Forbidden Droplet too. Like, there's a lot of things that it can get me to. So I felt that the Prosperity was significantly more than ideal, and I'm going to keep playing this going forward. Like, I think it's really good, and when you see the extra deck, you'll understand that Prosperity does not hurt the extra deck whatsoever. And a lot of times after you resolve one, you end up milling multiple off of Dante, so like, you don't have to worry about that. Lastly, we have a Foolish Burial and a Call by the Grave. These really don't need explanation. This is another Burning Abyss name, or if you open up your BA combo, you send Snow off of this, and then your Beatrice can just literally send whatever else you have to send. So yeah, that's the main deck. We're going to go ahead and hop on over to the extra deck now and talk about my choices. All right, so we are on to the extra deck now, and the extra deck is, I don't remember if it's the same. I think it's a little different than what I showcased in my last deck profile for the main deck. I also didn't mention in the main deck how I cut the Hydralanders. Hydralander's a bad card. That's all I'm going to say. Hydralander is just bad. But I think the extra deck is a little different here, and I'm contemplating whether or not I want to change anything in it. But we'll discuss that when we venture a little further here. So starting off, we have 2 Dantes, 1 Beatrice, and 1 Purple Dante. I think that this was and always will be the ratio that I like to go with, unless I'm playing like a retro format where you had to play 3 Dante. But currently, I think 2 Dante is more than enough. I had like 0 situations where I was in dire needs of a 3rd Dante. It just didn't come up. And the fact that we're playing 3 Seer, you're going to be able to loop it all the time. Yeah. I don't think there's much more to mention about Dante. But Beatrice, clutch, it's your Fairy Tale Snow Turbo, which is fantastic. After you've used the Fairy Tale Snow dump from Beatrice, you can then, if you feel that your opponent's not going to destroy your Beatrice, you can use it as an IP Masquerena material, and you can make a Nightmare Unicorn. So that's actually pretty dope, and it puts 2 more cards, actually 3 more cards in your grave, technically, because you discard 1 off of Unicorn. And then, obviously, Purple Dante is Purple Dante. Any game that I summon this card, I usually win it. So, yeah. And moving on to the other XYZ monsters that we play. We play the 1 copy of Fortune Tune, and I actually play 2 Downards. So, there were a lot of scenarios where, like, my opponent would summon a Verte, use the effect, and I would Valor it. And then my turn, I'd be able to make a Dante, and I wouldn't attach materials because I would swing with it, kill the Verte, they'd take 500, and main phase 2, I'd make the Downard, make a Zeus, so I could have 2 sends off of the Zeus. And I thought that was actually really important, like super, super important. Also, if you feel that the second one isn't going to come up, you can always banish it off of Pot of Prosperity. So there are multiple ways to go about it, but playing 2 Downard was awesome. The Fortune Tune didn't really come up. And I think I mentioned this already, but this is not the exact list that I played at the locals. I'm sure some people are noticing that by now if they've been keeping up with the videos. But yeah, so this isn't the exact list, but the extra deck is the same. The main deck is what's different. But yeah, I think that this is really, really good, really powerful. It definitely worked out for me. So yeah, I'll be keeping that the same. Then 2 copies of Zeus. This is crazy. Like, this card is nuts. I hope that this card never gets hit like the OCG had hit it to 1. I really hope this card stays at 3, because, like, there were so many times where I made a second Zeus and it came in clutch, and my opponent was just like, yeah, like, I can't play through a Zeus, and then they find a way to out it, and then I was like, oh wait, I have another one, and then it was just all downhill for them. So yeah, double Zeus is crazy. If you can play 2 of it, definitely play 2, like 100%. Moving on to the Link Monsters now. The Link Monsters is the only thing where I'm contemplating a singular change, and we'll discuss it when we get to it. But we have 1 copy of Cherubini and 1 copy of IP for your standard Link 2s that you're going to be using a lot. The Cherubini is typically used for link climbing, and the IP is used for your standard combo. I think that these are both fantastic cards. However, the Cherubini didn't come up excessively. The IP came up a lot, obviously. Like, that's a really strong combo. But Cherubini isn't necessarily bad. It's just that I didn't find a time where I was like, man, like, I really need to drop this card down. So yeah, still really good. Then we play one copy of Nightmare Phoenix and one copy of Nightmare Unicorn. These cards are always fantastic. The Unicorn came in clutch so much playing in the local, and I think everyone knows that, like, Nightmare Unicorn with IP Masquerena is one of the best interruptions. There's a point where my opponent tried to, like, DP my Unicorn, and I was like, yeah, I'm like, that's you could try and DP it, but it's not going anywhere. So yeah, it's just really strong. So yep, those are our kind of spot removal cards. And then Link Force, one access code, and one Appaloosa. So I don't think I played the access code down once. Usually everyone's scooped before it even hit the board, and yeah. the access code didn't come up, and the Appaloosa didn't come up either. And the Appaloosa is the card that I want to talk about. I put the Appaloosa in here strictly for one reason, and it was in the instance that I open up Seer and another Burning Abyss name, and like no way to get to Graph. That scenario never became relevant, and now I'm contemplating of cutting the Appaloosa for a copy of the Dark Charmer, because like that card, in my opinion, would have been significantly more useful, because I could have summoned back my opponent's DPEs from their grave to my board, and that would have been significantly better. I think Appaloosa is completely suboptimal. If you want to play Appaloosa and you want to like cut a Zeus and a Downward Magician, be my guest, but I think that's like a terrible thing to do. I think that the double Downer, double Zeus is probably the best setup in the extra deck. So yeah, but yeah, those are the Link Force, and that basically rounds off the extra deck. So we're gonna hop on over to the side deck, and I will talk about what I think going forward is fantastic against the meta. All right, so side deck time. I think that the side deck is already showing the card that I talk about in every single one of my side decks pretty much, so we might as well just jump right in with the 3 Artifact Lancia. Most people know by now that if you watch my videos, you're going to see this in the side deck or in the main deck, typically a side. But yeah, it's Lancia. I don't think I have to really go in depth with this. Your opponent cannot banish cards. That's the entire point of this. Like that, I'm not going to go any further than that. Your opponent can't banish cards, and yeah, it's a good card. That's that's Artifact Lancia. Then we have 2 copies of Droll and 1 copy of Token Collector for the other hand traps. So the cool thing with Token Collector is that you can send it off of Rhino Warrior. So like, that's obviously really important. You could send it off of Beatrice if you need to, or you send a Rhino Warrior with Beatrice, and then Rhino Warrior sends your Token Collector. Like there are a bunch of ways to get into it. But yeah, Token Collector is a pretty good card against like the Adventure Engine. It's good against like the base deck or Cyber's Eldritch. Like it's good against a lot of stuff. So yeah, Token Collector is something you should be considering if you're not playing it already. You can just do it as a one-of, honestly. You don't have to play more than that. The Droll is obviously good against a lot of stuff right now. So I think this card's actually fantastic because of decks like Invoked and like the Adventure Engine too. Like this is just an amazing card. Definitely a really good card. There's obviously a bunch of other decks. I'm not going to go fully in depth, but yeah, I felt that playing 6 more hand traps was pretty good, so we did that in that of the Lancia, the Droll, and the Token Collector. Then we have some back row removal. We have our 3 Lightning Storm and our 3 Twin Twister. If I was playing against a back row deck, I would side both of these in. If I was just playing against something like Prank Kids, I would probably just side in the Twin Twister. I don't think I have to go in much more detail than that, but if no one knows how this works, I'm sure most people know, because I feel that most people who are subscribed to my channel are at least half adjusted, acclimated to the meta, and understand how these certain combo lines work. But in case you don't know, you can Twin Twister your Prank Kid opponent in standby phase, hit their Pandemonium, and they can't chain Pandemonium because Pandemonium is only during the main phase. So yeah, that's why Twin Twister is really good. And obviously it's 2 cards, and you get to discard a card, which if you discard a BA, that's just like, it's free real estate. That's all it is. And then the Lightning Storm, like I said, if you're playing its backrow deck, you side this in too. It's also not terrible against something like Sword Soul too. Like you could drop this against Sword Soul to bait out their Baron negate, and then like you just keep playing the game. So yeah, I think that having that removal is really powerful. And then lastly, when we know we're going first, we side in 3 anti-spell, because this is probably one of the best, if not the best, going first card to side in. I flipped this card at locals so many times, and my opponent had absolutely no chance of recovery when I flipped this card. Like you completely slow your opponent down. Like Imperial Order is gone, which is fine. We have anti-spell. Like that's literally how this works. So yeah, anti-spell is really good. Fantastic card. It won me so many games, and I will continue to play it for that reason. Cuts off your adventure engine, stops half of the meta right now, especially like the branded stuff with the spells being out and being popular. Like anti-spell is nuts. But yeah, that's basically the entirety of the deck, the updated Burning Abyss list for the post Albaz Strike structure deck. There, like I said, there are no Albaz cards in here because they don't really synergize with the deck. You're not going to be using Verte to like send the branded fusion and then do like the Mirror Jade or Ice Blade, whatever it's called. That's not going to be happening in this deck. Like it's not what it does. This deck just turbos out Fairy Tale Snow and hand traps your opponent, and does a few interruptions. So yeah, it's literally all the deck needs anyways, and it cuts off a lot of your opponent's plays. So pretty cool stuff, and I've been enjoying it so far. So I gotta keep running with this and keep testing it out. But I hope everybody enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to smash the subscribe button so I know that everybody is enjoying the content. I see that we're just shy of 1,400 subscribers, so that's really exciting. That puts us at 2/5 of our goal for the year, because by the end of the year I want to be at 2,000 subscribers. So we're working our way there. We're going to keep going for it and trying to accomplish that goal, and I think we're going to do it. I can feel it. I can feel that we're going to do 2,000 by the end of the year. But as I said, hope everyone enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And for right now, this is Drew, Traveler of the Burning Abyss, signing out.